Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'll be discussing 5 differentials I think you should be considering into your team for the 24-25 season. Before we get into that, I'd like to announce that I am becoming a pro pundit for Fantasy Football Scout, so I'm delighted to start with them. If you're looking to support the channel or me, use the affiliate link to sign up as a member and it's 40% off for Fantasy Football Scout. And if you find any of this content useful, feel free to like and subscribe. So let's get into it. So before we get into the list, I kind of wanted to discuss what a differential is and why you might choose them over someone that's more popular. So in my eyes anyway, a differential is someone that's less than 10% owned and is kind of going against the crowd and you're not seeing them in many teams. So why would you pick a differential? For me anyway, I would pick a differential if I'm looking to make ground, and I feel like especially early on at the start of the season, you can kind of go for a bit more risks. Now, they don't always have to be risks necessarily, but for example, if everyone is going with a different £5 million pound asset rather than Munoz here, well then it is a small bit of a risk. So yeah, that's in my opinion what a differential is. And if you go with a differential at the start of the season and it works out in your way, you might be a few steps ahead of everyone else, as they might be trying to bring in your player. And because no one owns them, it'll be very hard for people to get to, and it might save you 1 or 2 transfers. So let's get into the first player on our list, which is Daniel Munoz for Crystal Palace. Daniel Munoz comes in at 5 million, and I think that's a very fair price. I think he signed for Crystal Palace in January last season, and he had a very big impact for Glasner as soon as he came in. So he got 4 assists in the few games he did play and 56 points. And he's currently 4.5% owned right now, as of now. And he has a decent set of fixtures coming in. Game week 1 he plays against Brentford away, which you could see him get a clean sheet. West Ham at home, which is could be a tight, cagey fixture, but the type of player that gets into a lot of attacking positions at right back. So you're more looking for upside and attacking threat, in my opinion anyway. And then he has Chelsea away, which you don't expect a lot from, but then Leicester at home and United at home, which he could definitely get attacking returns in. So he's the first player on the list. I feel like he is a good option at 5 million. When you look at the other 5 millions, you have the likes of Shaw, and United haven't been bad, but I feel like Munoz offers way more attacking threat than the likes of Shaw. So let's get into the next player on the list. So next player on the list is one I really like at 6.5 million. It's Brennan Johnson. Johnson comes in at 1.9% owned, which is not a lot at all. Last season he scored 5 goals and 12 assists and 131 points overall. For me, Brennan last season wasn't great in terms of an overall season, but I feel like there's a lot more to come from this kid. He signed for 60 million and he was Ange's first signing under his reign, and I just feel like this season coming I'm expecting big things, and I do expect him to start over Kulo. So at 6.5 million, there is a lot of other 6.5 million options, and I'll bring them up now. But I feel like he does fit in, and he could definitely differentiate you from an Nkunku or someone like that. So good opening fixtures in my opinion, and the thing for me with Tottenham players is I feel like they could almost score against anyone. So you have Leicester away, which is a great fixture, Everton at home, and then Newcastle away, which is a very tough fixture at St James's Park. But again, I feel like Tottenham do score in the bigger games, and Arsenal at home, which is one of the worst fixtures in the league on paper, but then again he could score or get an assist or get something anyway. And then Brentford at home. So if you're looking for a little enabler at 6.5 million, I feel like Brennan Johnson is a great option. So let's get into the next player. So Ben Johnson. Okay, so a lot of people are talking about 4 million options, and a lot of people are talking about Barco. And Barco is a great option, don't get me wrong. But another 4.0 million player that I think needs some more light is Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson was signed from West Ham and he joined Ipswich, and he's a right back. So when Ben Johnson was playing for West Ham, he was being subbed on the wing, which I thought was really interesting. And he's a very tidy player, good on the ball, and I think we will see a lot of him for Ipswich. They recently had a friendly against Shakhtar Donetsk and they won 1-0, and Ben Johnson started at right back for them. And this is not to be confused with Brennan Johnson. I know it's another Johnson. If you look at the fixtures, they are absolutely woeful. But for a 4.0 million player, what you're looking for is stats, regardless of who they're playing, and you want to call upon them at some point when you need them, when you desperately need them. So obviously you wouldn't start him all the time, but maybe versus Southampton away or against Leicester at home, which I think he has in game week 10, it's not a bad option at all. And I really do think he will start. So at 1.7% owned, why not? So let's get into the next player. So next on the list, we have Ivan Toney. So there's a lot of talk about a move for Toney. I do think he will go to a top side this season, whether it's Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, I'm unsure. But for whatever team he does join, I think he could be a very good forward. So last season he scored 57 points, 4 goals and 3 assists. Now when we talk about a striker in our teams for game week 1, usually it's a Watkins, a Haaland, or João Pedro. But there's a few strikers that come in at 7 million or 7.5 million that are going underneath the radar. So Toney is at 12.2% owned, so he's not as big of a differential, but I'm not seeing him in many teams, so I decided to add him. And I feel like his ownership will skyrocket if he joins one of the bigger teams. Toney is on a lot of penalties and a lot of free kicks, so it'd be interesting to keep an eye on where he does go. I think it's very unlikely he does stay at Brentford, like I said, but if he does stay at Brentford, he's still a good option. We've seen him return on numerous occasions, even though he does play for Brentford, so he's definitely one to keep an eye on. And let's get into the next player. So the last player on the list is Young-min Son. Son is an interesting one, and he's at the 10 million price bracket. Other 10 million players include the likes of Foden, well 9.5 for Foden, Saka at 10 and Palmer at 10.5. Last season he scored 213 points, 17 goals and 10 assists, and I do think this goes underneath the radar a small bit. He's currently 8.8% owned, and I feel he has a very strong fixture set for the first 5, and even the next 5 are quite strong. So for me, I think I'll be starting with Son. When we talk about differentials, a lot of people will be going for Foden and Palmer, who are way higher owned, and even Foden. So Son's on penalties, Son will be on some free kicks, and we could even see him in the number 9 position going forward, as Richarlison looks like he's potentially making a move. So I suppose time will tell where he plays, but for me, regardless, I think he's a very, very good option, and I think he does need to be considered. So for me, I do strongly think he will be in my game week 1 team, and I won't be surprised if we see him get 20 goals and double-digit assists also next season. So that's all from me today. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think about these options, and feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next.